Panama City in flames as Panama's military fights it out in the streets. Junior officers apparently fail in a bloody attempt to overthrow General Manuel Noriega. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from Washington. Good evening. While denying that the United States had anything to do with instigating the uprising, President Bush and his aides watched and hoped all day as officers of the Panamanian Defense Forces rose up against their boss, the accused drug dealer who has clung to power for 2 years in defiance of his former friends, the Reagan and Bush administrations. Tonight, a Noriega aide said the situation is under control. A spokesman for President Bush acknowledged that the effort to oust Noriega has apparently failed. Street battles had raged throughout the day in Panama City, mostly around the downtown military barracks. Soldiers who guard those barracks seized control with a sudden attack, but forces loyal to Noriega surrounded the headquarters, counterattacked from street corners and rooftops, and claimed victory at the end of the day. Now, with us now on the telephone from Panama City is the Latin American correspondent of the Miami Herald, Andres Oppenheimer. Andres, I understand that Noriega himself has just appeared on television. Tell us about that, please.
He just appeared about a minute ago. He looked relaxed. He smiled. He was wearing his regular military uniform, and he said it was all over. The good guys won, and he asked the people to remain calm. And he was surrounded by about 20 people, most of them military officers, and he looked like he was indeed in control.
From other information that you've been gathering during the day, does that check out? Does it appear that he has indeed carried the day and now is back in control, if indeed he's ever out of it?
Well, it's hard to tell because the 3 or 4 radio stations and the one television channel that announced, that broadcast the rebel communique, they were all put off the air immediately, about 10 minutes after they started putting out those communiques. Now, that can be done. You don't need to send a platoon of troops to seize these radio stations. You can do it from the control tower of the electricity company here in Panama City. So what we know for a fact is that the state-run media are in control of the government, that Noriega is alive and well and is not being held by the rebels, and also that we don't hear as much shooting as we did 5 or 6 hours ago.
Thank you very much, Andres Oppenheimer of the Miami Herald. Our Pentagon correspondent, David Martin, has been watching the conflict from a distance as it twisted and turned all day and is standing by now. David, is anyone at the Pentagon explaining the administration's apparent hands-off attitude?
Well, there are a couple reasons for that, Dan. One is the fact that there was no public plea for help. Another reason, I'm told, is that some of the coup leaders had a fairly unsavory reputation, and the fear in the Bush administration was that if they intervened, they would be accused of Yankee imperialism, but would end up with someone not much better than Noriega.
And the view at the Pentagon right now of the situation is what?
Well, the view here is that it is still quite confusing, although it appears that the coup has failed. They spent most of the day here at the Pentagon, much like us, which was trying to figure out what was going on.
David?
It began this morning when dissident soldiers, possibly 200 in number, stormed Noriega's headquarters in downtown Panama. Noriega was believed to be inside at the time. The rebels apparently took advantage of a Panamanian military exercise to catch him with his guard down.
There's a large number of troops who are generally loyal to Noriega who are undertaking this exercise. So there was a certain degree of planning and care under which this attempted coup was undertaken.
The fighting took place just 500 yards from the headquarters of the U.S. Southern Command. And although American helicopters were sent up to observe, U.S. officials insist American troops were doing nothing.
Our facilities down there are locked up. They are secure. There's been no involvement of U.S. personnel. We're continuing to watch, and right now it's an internal matter in Panama.
For a while, it looked as though it would succeed. The rebels seized the radio station and announced that Noriega and his entire high command had been forced into retirement.
But by late afternoon, Dan, Noriega's forces had regained control of the headquarters and resumed broadcasting over the radio station. The coup is considered to have failed. The leaders are reported to have surrendered.
Thank you, David. President Bush strongly denied what he called, quote, rumors today that the coup attempt was engineered in Washington. But the president was far from a disinterested observer. Our White House correspondent, Wyatt Andrews, has been following the story all day long there, Wyatt.
Dan, here's what we know from the White House. President Bush wanted the coup in general to happen against Noriega. It was U.S. policy all along to encourage a coup. The administration said it knew in advance that today's insurrection might happen and admitted that U.S. troops were stationed throughout the day in Panama, but said that was only to protect the access ways to the Panama Canal. Despite all of that, President Bush said flatly that the United States was not actually a part of today's attempted revolt.
There were rumors around that this was some American operation, and I can tell you that is not true.
But it is true the White House was not caught completely by surprise. Spokesman Marlin Fitzwater said for the last couple of days there had been rumblings a revolt against Noriega was imminent. Fitzwater also said there have been at least a half dozen such warnings during the Bush administration, and until the shots were fired, he said, we really didn't know. American operation or not, last May, President Bush directly asked the Panamanian military to oust Noriega.
Well, we'd love to see him get him out. We'd like to see him out of there.
And there's been a more subtle message all along to those officers not loyal to Noriega. They could count on America's friendship. The president sent that signal again today.
We've had good relations with the Panamanian Defense Forces, and our argument has been, as has many other countries, with Mr. Noriega, who aborted the democratic will of the people of Panama.
With the White House saying it wasn't involved today, some on Capitol Hill were asking, why not?
Military action is warranted. We have the absolute unilateral right to use force in that country under the treaty, and there has been a overthrow of a legitimate elected government.
Despite the apparent failure of the coup, the White House is still calling today's coup somewhat encouraging, simply because for the first time, Noriega faced a tough and armed opposition. At the same time, Dan, it is also clearly a setback for the administration, just in the sense that President Bush wanted a coup, got one, and it didn't work.
Wyatt Andrews, thanks. Joining us now from New York is a Panamanian opposition leader, Garmo Ford. He ran for vice president in the elections last May, the elections that were nullified by Noriega. You may remember his picture after the election, his shirt covered with blood as he was being beaten up in the street by Noriega's thugs. Thank you for being with us tonight. And from your sources, what do they tell you is going on in Panama?
Well, after the coup attempt this morning, I was informed that apparently it was over this afternoon. Yet I received a call about an hour ago that they have been hearing some more shooting at the headquarters, but this has not been confirmed. I feel that Noriega must be in a position right now of wondering why the defense forces want him out as much as the Panamanian people and all democracies around the world that want him out also.
Realistically, what do you expect to happen now?
I think Noriega is going to get stronger regarding the Panamanian people. He's been holding us hostage for the last 2 years. But by the same token, the leaders in the opposition, we have a firm determination to help the Panamanian people find democracy through peaceful means.
And when President Bush said today that there was not a U.S. involvement in this, anything that you know of would to the contrary?
No, absolutely. I think it was something within the defense forces. It is impossible for us to have contact with the military, but I am 100% sure that there was no U.S. involvement or anybody else's involvement, except that the young officers within the defense forces, they want to take care of their institution as much as we wanted to have them take care of the institution also.
Mr. Garmo Ford, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dan.
And still to come on the CBS Evening News tonight from Washington, the latest on the fighting in Panama and what it may mean. Also, Peter Van Sant in Prague, where East Germans are fighting their way to the West.
What's your first priority? Miss Crowley.
Well, I'm assuming there's product in the pipeline, so...
Assuming, Miss Crowley. Unfortunately, assuming doesn't feed the bulldog.
The top business schools prepare you for every eventuality you will ever encounter in the business world, except one, business travel. We've got that one covered. United. Come fly the friendly skies.
How can Miss Crowley's three-person sales force stay on top of her far-flung enterprise?
Hold out your finger, please.
In the last year or so, millions of people have decided to have their cholesterol checked. Many of them have also started eating healthier, including foods like Kellogg's Common Sense Oat Bran, with more oat bran than any leading ready-to-eat cereal. If you haven't tried either one of these things, we'd like to recommend them. There's at least one you'll really enjoy. Kellogg's Common Sense Oat Bran, to millions of people It's the oat bran that makes sense.
So what are you doing at Dow these days, Peggy?
Well, right now I'm working in agricultural research, Grandpa. We're trying to help farmers find new ways to make every dollar work harder.
We want to keep this farm in the family a few more generations.
Pretty tough, isn't it?
You bet. So your dad and brother are going to need all the help they can get.
And you can make a difference in what tomorrow brings.
I won't let you down.
'Cause Dow lets you do great things.
Here in Washington, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Jack Kemp proposed sweeping changes today in the way HUD does business. Kemp did so amid the still unfolding investigation of what happened at HUD before Kemp's watch, mismanagement, corruption, and crime during the Reagan-Bush administration that could cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Correspondent Harry Smith has a report.
Housing Secretary Jack Kemp unveiled a package of 50 reforms designed to clean up his agency, which has been plagued by political influence peddling and outright fraud.
It's also going to send a strong message to those who want to rip off the poor that in this administration, don't try, because we'll come after you.
The highlights include announcing publicly all HUD grants, registering consultants and disclosing their fees, appointing a chief financial officer to monitor HUD spending, eliminating federal loans for second homes and investment properties, and eliminating the Secretary's discretionary fund, which critics charge former HUD Secretary Sam Pierce used as a political slush fund.
We recognize that only a comprehensive change in program management, financial accountability, and an ethics at HUD would be necessary to clear the decks.
The chairman of the House committee probing the HUD scandal agreed.
Such controls would have eliminated most of our need for undertaking this lengthy and still ongoing investigation, which revealed more than $7 billion in mismanaged funds.
Kemp's overhaul of HUD won't be cheap. It'll cost about $100 million to implement. But the Secretary argues that that's a good investment to ensure that his agency's $22 billion budget goes to the poor rather than the politically well-connected. Terrence Smith, CBS News, Washington.
Nearly 60,000 union machinists voted overwhelmingly late today to go on strike at midnight against Seattle-based Boeing, the world's leading maker of passenger planes. The machinists make up on half of Boeing's total workforce.
Life without cholesterol. I mean, how much lettuce can one man endure? Give up the best things in life. What's left?
New Miracle Whip cholesterol-free dressing. Same tangy zip as Miracle Whip and absolutely no cholesterol. So you get all the taste and none of the cholesterol.
I do?
New Miracle Whip cholesterol-free. Now the best things in life are cholesterol-free.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I was feeling pretty good when I saw my boy Joe in that new Oldsmobile. I thought Joe had finally matured some. But that new Cutlass Clay doesn't look like any Oldsmobile that I ever had. It's got something called a high-output Part 4 engine. The next thing you know, Joe will be bringing home girls.
This is not your father's Oldsmobile. This is the new generation of Olds.
Now get up to a $1,600 cash bonus on a 1990 Cutlass Calais. See your Olds dealer today.
Don't let morning breath ruin a good morning. Use Scope. Scope has 2 powerful ingredients to kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath. Scope, the best thing, first thing in the morning.
For the second time in 4 days, East Germany caved in today and agreed to let thousands of its citizens flee to the west from Czechoslovakia. But at the same time, the communist government tried to slam the door against any more mass defections, saying it will no longer allow East Germans to travel freely into Czechoslovakia. Correspondent Peter Van Sant in London watched the day's developments.
More than 10,000 Germans are celebrating tonight, joining the historic exodus from east to west, heading out of the Eastern Bloc into a new life. Many had to battle their way through Czech police barricades onto the grounds of the West German embassy in Prague. Freedom would not come easily. Despite the surge of refugees, there was some order. Women and children were first over the walls. Within hours, the embassy's grounds had the population of a small town. Medical people took care of the injured, but the overcrowding was creating serious problems.
There's no space anymore. These people are standing, they can't lay down anymore. That means there's no solution.
While negotiations continued, the refugees learned that East Germany had sealed off its border with Czechoslovakia, further isolating East Germans from the rest of the world.
To close the border even with Czechoslovakia really is a confession that they have to keep their people under very tight surveillance and that they can't count on their loyalty.
Today, the Soviet communist daily Pravda criticized West Germany for taking in the refugees, saying it threatened European stability. Nonetheless, Bonn tonight thanked the Soviets for not blocking the escape. More than 37,000 East Germans have now fled their country since May. And while these people are among the lucky ones, East Germany is taking steps to ensure that future freedom trains won't get out of the station. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, London.
After an all-night debate, the Soviet parliament today approved a temporary, limited ban on strikes. This covers railroads, mining, and a few other key economic sectors. Mikhail Gorbachev had asked for a total ban on strikes for 15 months, but lawmakers rejected that as unconstitutional.
To my beautiful wife.
It's nice to know he still loves the way you look. And if you wear dentures, you can count on Effordent to freshen up dentures and clean away stains so well. With Effordent, all he'll notice is you. After you've produced the yearly report in record time, after you've made order out of paperwork chaos, after you've turned the slideshow into a colorful part of your winning proposal, and seen productivity become top priority, maybe after all that, you'll know why Canon is the most popular copier in America. From personal to color laser copying, the choice is Canon. Call toll-free 1-800-OK-CANON.
I was gulping a hot dog when my little superstar made an unbelievable goal. I gave that ref a piece of my mind, but it went to my stomach. It was a Maalox moment. I took extra strength Maalox Plus, strongest antacid there is. My doctor recommended it. I need the strongest with my husband, the ref.
Nobody's perfect.
Write us about your Maalox moments. Extra strength Maalox Plus, strong relief for all your Maalox moments.
New fallout from the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling last July, making it easier for states to restrict abortions. Correspondent Bruce Morton reports tonight from Pennsylvania. The state legislature there will be the first in the nation to consider new and sweeping abortion restrictions. The first, but by no means the last.
The sun shone, the crowd sang patriotic songs and hymns, and the battle over abortion came to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, Pennsylvania, and you truly are Pennsylvania.
Anti-abortion legislators introduced a package of bills. A woman must be told of alternatives to abortion, must tell her husband if she's having one, and one provision which invites the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade, the basic abortion rights decision.
That's the one that says after 24 weeks, no abortions except those necessary to save the life of the mother.
The pro-choice forces held their rally a week ago, and they've introduced legislation too, but there is not much doubt which side will win here.
I think he's going to win with what he has introduced, but I do think that we will have an impact on some of the sections of that legislation.
Both sides agree the pro-life legislation will pass. But Pennsylvania's legislators may be out of step with the state's voters. A CBS News New York Times poll in Pennsylvania released tonight shows that Pennsylvanians, like other Americans, support a woman's right to an abortion. 53% say they would support an amendment to the state constitution guaranteeing a woman the right to have an abortion. But some restrictions are popular too. Parents should consent to a minor's abortion, Pennsylvanians think, and husbands should be told if their wives are going to have one of today's proposals.
The only poll that counts
is the one that's taken in election time.
It's now a political fight. We didn't ask for it, but we're going to engage in it and we're going to win it.
Here in Pennsylvania, pro-choice advocates say their hope is not to win this time, but to elect some different legislators next time.
A lot of what we're doing is involved with sending messages.
The fight is not just here. Next week, Florida's legislature meets in special session on abortion, and there, the pro-choice people say they'll win, beating back restrictions proposed by the governor.
I think that the bills, if they are taken up, will be defeated in committees.
A lot of other legislatures won't take up abortion until 1990. But it's not an issue just for lawyers and judges anymore. Today's rally looked like a political campaign event because it was one. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Harrisburg.
The U.S. House of Representatives has now put off until tomorrow a showdown vote on repealing the government's catastrophic illness insurance program. Pressure for repeal is coming primarily from those older Americans the program is supposed to help. Hall of Fame tackle Art Shell today became the first man who happens to be black to become a head coach in modern National Football League history. Shell takes over the Los Angeles Raiders from Mike Shanahan, who was fired. An off-screen triumph for movie actor William Hurt following a dramatic trial last spring. A New York State Supreme Court judge ruled today that Hurt and his former lover, Sandra Jennings, did not have a common law marriage. A ruling in her favor would have allowed Jennings to claim one half of the actor's assets. Jennings' lawyer says there will be an appeal. A strong dollar, possibly fueled by the Panama Coup reports, encouraged a stock market rally on the New York Exchange. The Dow Jones rose nearly 41 points to a record high.
How do orange juice, tomato juice, and grapefruit juice measure up to prune juice? You get more of 7 important vitamins and minerals in a glass of great-tasting Sunsweet prune juice. Mmm. Sunsweet. Here's to your health.
During the past 4 years, automotive engineers have worked hard trying to build a car as good as the Honda Accord. They take it apart, study it, put it back together, study it some more. While they're busy doing that, we'd like to introduce the new Accord.
I just did something incredible. 5 minutes ago, I had gray hair, but now I don't. And this is what did it. New Option Instant from Clairol. The advanced way to get rid of the gray. New Option Instant for men is different. There's no messy mixing. It's so easy. Just press, apply, and only 5 minutes later, your natural-looking color's back. Hair even feels thicker. So why look like this?
When you can look like this.
New Option Instant from Clairol. The advanced way to get rid of the gray.
If I don't get some Z's, I'll be a basket case tomorrow.
Nitol will help you get your Z's.
Nitol safely helps you fall asleep fast.
Nitol will help you get your Z's.
We're going to come back to tonight's major story. Because of the military coup attempt in Panama, the situation has been very fluid, very difficult to understand all throughout the day. The latest available information that apparently the coup attempt has failed to oust General Manuel Noriega. The fighting went on most of the day in Panama City, and some scattered shooting is still reported at this hour. However, Colonel Noriega went on Panamanian television tonight to say that it was all over and that his forces have won. President Bush emphasized that the United States had nothing to do with starting the insurrection, but he stressed again that the United States does want to see Noriega out. Now, Noriega, of course, has been an acute embarrassment for United States foreign policy for 2 years now. He has frustrated every move against him from Washington and elsewhere, and now he has apparently survived yet another challenge at home. Our State Department correspondent Bill Plant looks at the Panama problem.
Manuel Noriega is a little like the man who came to dinner. Once countered a friend of the U.S., but years ago branded an international drug dealer. He just won't go away, even though Washington has been dropping not very subtle hints for almost 2 years now.
What we would like to see is a return to democracy and a civilian government in Panama, and not this domination by literally a military dictator.
Early in 1988, the U.S. indictment charged that Noriega had turned Panama into a financial center and way station for Colombian drug kingpins.
It is intolerable that an individual who has been subverted by the international drug business should be running a country.
And so the Reagan administration began trying to leverage Noriega out of power.
We were willing to, in a sense, try to starve him out through the embargo and to call for his departure and to encourage rhetorically the Panamanians who were against him. What we were not willing to do was to push with American force.
It never worked. The general always bounced back. He survived a coup attempt in early 1988 and U.S. sanctions which crippled Panama's economy. His method, liberal applications of drug money and terror.
He's smarter than we give him credit for, and he has a strong base of support inside the Panamanian army. It's a very corrupt institution, so he's been able to use profits from the drug trade to cement that loyalty.
Noriega's latest thumb in Washington's eye was an election last spring in which his candidate was so clearly the loser that the general simply invalidated the balloting. Garmo Ford and other opposition candidates were brutally beaten by Noriega loyalists.
You cannot have an election that is blatantly stolen, where people that win are beaten up by thugs.
So despite continued high-level encouragement from the United States, everything, apparently now including this latest coup attempt, seems to have failed. And the question around here is now what? The fear, of course, is that surviving yet again will make Noriega seem like some sort of Superman, far tougher than Uncle Sam. Dan?
Thank you, Bill. Joining us now here in Washington is the former Panamanian ambassador to the United States, now an anti-Noriega activist, Juan Socha. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Ambassador. What about the question of what next? Where does the United States go from here?
It's a very difficult problem because Noriega has proven a tremendous stamina to survive. And this is bad for the United States, this is bad for Panamanians, and this is bad for the region.
Do you foresee any time in the foreseeable future that Noriega is out? He seems to have resisted, as you say, every effort to get him out.
I've always said this is a process, and I think the process is working. Today is another indication that Noriega has lost the support of even his own PDF.
Now, you heard the calls from some members of the United States Congress saying, look, it's time to move in with the U.S. military force. Agree or disagree?
I agree this is the time to move together with other democracies and stop this cancer that is eating Panama alive.
Including military force?
Including military force.
Do you expect that to happen?
Unfortunately, the political realities in the United States are such that it will make it probably very difficult. But if there is any time to help the Panamanians survive these monsters, this is the time.
Of course you can. But if you could plan the moves and effect the moves, what would you do?
Very simple. First of all, Noriega does not have full control of the PDS forces. Panama is a very small country. You don't even need a full-scale operation. Only a surgical strike would be enough to get rid of Noriega.
So your recommendation is a surgical military strike and do it now?
Right.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us here live in Washington. And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News, reporting tonight from our nation's capital. See you tomorrow. Good night.
This is CBS.
Just ahead on 11 News, Astros catcher Craig Biggio's DWI trial heats up with allegations of a bribe to a police officer. A Houston man makes a grisly find today in Memorial Park.
Questions over safety remain unanswered at the Harris County Jail, a tax hike for Harris County residents, and a space businessman. Weather, sports, and much more coming up next.